72 warships burn in Alexandria's harbour. The flames climb 40 feet into the October night, and they are about to consume more knowledge than any fire in human history. The year is 48 BC. Julius Caesar stands in the royal quarter of Alexandria with 4,000 Roman legionaries. They are surrounded. Across the city, the Egyptian general Achilles commands an army of 20,000. Caesar has backed himself into a peninsula, the Bruttium district, a strip of marble palaces and colonnades pressed against the Mediterranean Sea. Behind him, the Pharos lighthouse rises 400 feet from its island, its mirror blazing a beacon visible 30 miles out to sea. Ahead of him, an Egyptian fleet threatens to seal the harbour and starve his men into surrender. Caesar is not here to conquer Egypt. He is here chasing Pompey, his rival in Rome's civil war. But Pompey is already dead, beheaded on the beach by agents of the boy king Ptolemy I. Now Caesar is trapped in a succession crisis between Ptolemy and his sister Cleopatra. The Egyptian army has chosen its side. Caesar has chosen his, and the siege has begun. The royal quarter holds more than palaces. It holds the Muson, the Temple of the Muses. This is the ancient world's greatest research institution. Scholars live here on royal stipends, working in colonnaded walkways, debating in lecture halls, and consulting the most ambitious collection of texts ever assembled. The main library contains somewhere between 400,000 and 700,000 scrolls. No one knows the exact number. The catalogues alone fill 120 volumes. A second collection sits across the city at the Serapeum, a temple complex dedicated to the hybrid god Serapis. This daughter library holds perhaps 40,000 additional scrolls. Together, these repositories contain the accumulated knowledge of the Mediterranean world. The scrolls are papyrus, manufactured from reeds harvested in the Nile Delta. Each one is handwritten, hand-copied, irreplaceable. Many exist nowhere else on Earth. Under a decree issued by Ptolemy III a century earlier, customs officials confiscate books from every ship entering Alexandria's port. Scribes copy the texts, return the copies to the owners, and keep the originals for the library. Merchant vessels, diplomatic missions, private travelers, all contribute involuntarily to the collection. The men who built this knowledge are legends. Euclid wrote the elements here, the foundation of geometry for 2,000 years. Eratosthenes calculated the circumference of the Earth by measuring shadow angles between Alexandria and Syene. He was accurate to within 2%. Archimedes studied here before returning to Syracuse. Callimachus created the Pinacex, the first library catalogue system in history. Apollonius wrote the Argonautica. Aristarchus proposed that the Earth orbits the Sun, 17 centuries before Copernicus. Their work sits in those scrolls. The mathematics, the astronomy, the poetry, the histories, the engineering manuals, the medical treatises, the philosophical dialogues. Texts copied from Aristotle's personal library. Documents from the Persian archives' personal library. Egyptian records stretching back millennia. Now Caesar faces a tactical problem. The Egyptian fleet in the harbour can blockade him indefinitely. Reinforcements from Rome cannot land if those ships control the water. His 4,000 men will run out of food. They will run out of options. The siege will end in Roman corpses. He orders his men to burn the Egyptian fleet. The legionaries launch fireships. They hurl flaming projectiles from the docks. 72 Egyptian warships ignite in sequence. The flames reflect off the harbour water, off the white limestone of the Pharos, off the palace walls. The Egyptian naval threat dies in a single night. But fire does not respect military objectives. The harbour wind pushes the flames toward shore. The warehouses of the Bruttium waterfront catch first. Grain stores, timber stockpiles, rope, tar, papyrus. The fire spreads along the docks, where 40,000 scrolls sit in customs warehouses, waiting for transport to the library. These are books recently confiscated from arriving ships, not yet catalogued, not yet copied, not yet shelved in the Muson. They burn. The fire spreads from the docks into the city. Roman soldiers fight Egyptian forces in the streets, while flames consume the harbor district. And somewhere in that chaos, scrolls burn. The ancient sources cannot agree on what happens next. Plutarch, writing a century and a half later, mentions the fire almost in passing. He says Caesar burned the ships, and the flames spread to destroy the great library. Seneca, writing closer to the event, gives a number. 40,000 scrolls, he claims. 40,000 book rolls consumed in a single night. Dio Cassius, 2 centuries after that, describes warehouses near the docks catching fire. 40,000 scrolls sounds catastrophic. It sounds like the death of ancient knowledge in one terrible evening. But the number needs context. The main library, the Mousson, sits inland. It is attached to the royal palace complex, protected by walls and gardens. The Mousson holds somewhere between 400,000 and 700,000 scrolls at its peak. 40,000 is not the Mosul. Modern scholars now believe what burned were export copies. Alexandria is not just a center of learning, it is a center of trade. The harbor warehouses store scrolls waiting for shipment across the Mediterranean. Books bound for Rome, for Athens, for Antioch. These are copies made by scribes, specifically for sale abroad. They sit on the docks because that is where merchant ships load their cargo. This does not make the loss trivial. Among those 40,000 scrolls, some may have been unique. Original manuscripts waiting for copying. Works that existed in only one version. The problem with losing a text is that you cannot always know what you have lost. The catalogue of possibilities haunts historians. Original manuscripts in Aristotle's own hand, acquired by the Ptolemies generations earlier. Early Greek maps of the known world, drawn by explorers who sailed past Gibraltar. Babylonian astronomical records spanning centuries, translated into Greek by scholars who could still read cuneiform. Mathematical treatises by thinkers whose names we no longer know. Plays by Sophocles and Euripides that never got copied again. We cannot prove any specific work died in the fire. We can only count what survives and measure the void. The war continues after the docks burn. Caesar holds out through the winter. Reinforcements arrive in January of 47 BC. The Battle of the Nile ends the conflict decisively. Ptolemy XIII, 23 years old, flees the battlefield. His boat capsizes in the river. They find his body in golden armor, drowned in the Nile, his ancestors claim to rule. Cleopatra VII takes the throne. Caesar returns to Rome. The library survives. The Mousson continues to operate. Scholars still walk its colonnades, still copy texts, still debate philosophy in its halls. The fire was a wound, not a killing blow. A decade later, Mark Antony reportedly gives Cleopatra 200,000 scrolls taken from the library at Pergamon. A gift to replace what burned. A gesture of love and politics combined. Plutarch reports this, though he also notes that some contemporaries called it slander against Antony. The Mousson dies slowly over the following centuries. Christian and pagan conflicts damage it. Roman emperors raid it. Funding disappears. Scholars leave for Constantinople, for Antioch, for anywhere that still pays them. By the time Caliph Omar's forces take Alexandria in 642 AD, the Great Library is already a memory. Whether the Arabs burned what remained is disputed. The sources are late and contradictory. What matters is the arithmetic of survival. Of the hundreds of thousands of texts that once filled Alexandria's shelves, we possess fragments. Of the complete works of ancient Greek literature, 90% is gone. Not burned in one night, but lost across centuries. Scrolls that rotted, copies that were never made, libraries that closed, languages that were forgotten. The fire of 48 BC destroyed warehouses on a dock in a city at war. It became something else in memory, a symbol, a warning, proof that knowledge is physical. It exists on paper and papyrus and parchment. It requires copying, preservation, intention. Without these, it disappears. And once gone, it does not return.